I'll go ahead and read the accessibility statement and some of the other notices of protection. All right. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones or telephones will be used by all speakers. If you would like this accommodation, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833. And in terms of notice of non-discrimination, the notice of non-discrimination rights and protections of beneficiaries with regard to the federal Title VI non-discrimination protections and the state non-discrimination protections is included on this meeting's agenda and is available on Old Colony Planning Council website.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, someone's got something going on. All right. That is available on the Old Colony Planning Council website at https oldcolonyplanning.org and then / Please contact Mary Walden at 508-583-1833 for more information. Thank you for all that. Clearly, I can't speak today, so. All right, let's move to the next agenda item. Are there any members of the public who like to address the MPO today? All right, seeing none, let's move to the next agenda item, and that is potentially approving the minutes of July 18th. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Mary Waldron, so moved.
Second.
That was Michael. All right, any changes, comments, or anything to the minutes of July 18th? All right, seeing none. Charlie, you want to read the roll?
Yes, Steve Wolfel,
Yes.
Richard
Aye.
Bilski,
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan, and your Brockton rep present. James Downey, Plymouth, not here yet. West Bridgewater, don't see anybody yet. Whitman, Dan Salvucci.
I abstain.
Okay, Michael Lambert
Yes.
and Mayor Waldron.
Yes.
So Chair, we only have 4 affirmative votes, so it does not pass at the moment.
All right, so why
So
don't
we'll
we,
have to come back if somebody else comes in later on.
all right, so let's start doing the report outs and we'll kind of skip around until we can make sure we have a quorum. So the next agenda item is agenda item 4, which is the Brockton Area Transit Report. Michael, are you doing it or is it Glenn? Or are you guys tag teaming?
I will do it and then Glenn can jump in when I forget something.
Okay.
First and foremost, as you're likely aware, the legislature and governor passed the FY24 budget last week, which is great news for your local transit authorities. We are expecting to see a significant increase in funding based on the fair share amendment, millionaire's tax, and are working through with MassDOT exactly what form that funding will take and how it will be allocated. But we at that, in any event, expect to be expanding weekend service at a pretty significant level in the short term. Even without that funding in hand, we have some good milestones to report on. We hit 7,000 trips a day last week for the first time since COVID, and our new Rockland service hit an all-time high of 38 trips, which is nearly double what the old fixed route was averaging. And again, that's, we're still just sort of slowly ramping up the PR around that service so that we don't swamp it, but we expect that number to keep going up. Glenn, any other important items?
All right, any questions for Michael? All right, seeing none. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Charlie, do we have a quorum now or?
Jade DeGrace just showed up, so thank you.
Yeah, Chair, we did have a quorum previously on the minutes, but with Dan Salvucci abstaining, there were only 4 people actually voting in the affirmative, so it wouldn't pass. We need 5 votes.
All right, so why don't I
But
go
we
back?
do have Brockton present now, so why don't we try that again?
Apologies for being late. Start from scratch with agenda item 3. Can I get a motion, a second to approve the minutes of July 18th?
Mary Waldron, make the motion to approve.
Michael Lambert, second.
All right, any changes or comments on the minutes? All right, seeing none, Charlie, please read the roll.
Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Richard Bilski,
Yes.
Jay DeGrasse,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Abstain.
Michael Lambert,
Yes,
and Mary Waldron.
Yes,
There you go.
Chair, motion carries. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is an update from the Greater Attleboro Taunton Regional Transit Authority. Is anyone from GATRA here? Either Marilyn, is Marilyn here or Stacy? Charlotte, it looks like neither are here, correct?
That is correct. We'll just move on. We don't have a
Right.
report.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is updates from District 5 on projects. Richard, who's doing this for you? Is Barbara or Sean here?
No, I'll be doing it today.
All right, take it away, Richard.
Okay, for FY23, we have 607-403, which is the Stoughton Corridor Improvements projects from Route 138 to Charles Ave to Lincoln Street, which is phase 1. That's at PS&E Rev 2. And then we have Stoughton intersection improvements and really work at Central Street, Kent Street, and Toscada Drive. That's 608-279. And that's at PS&E Rev 1. It should be completed shortly. For FY24, we have 609-052 Brockton intersection improvements at Center Street, Route 123, and Plymouth Street. That's a comment resolution meeting is scheduled for the end of this month for a revised 25. Then there'll be a utility meeting followed by the design public hearing. Then we have Brockton intersection improvements and related work at Center Street, Route 23, Carey Street, and Lyman Street. And we're waiting on the PS&E, which is slightly overdue. Right now, that's 609-410. And then for FY25, we have the Stoughton Phase 2 project for Route 138. That's 613-352. And the scope and fee has been submitted for that for our designer. Then we have Brockton 607-818. That's the intersection improvements at Lyman Street, Grove Street, and Summer, and replacement of the Grove Street Bridge. That's let's see. Okay, we received a new bridge type study workbook for the bridge. There was a geotechnical report, and we had a 25% design submission. Easton 608-195 is the corridor improvements on Route 138, including the intersection improvements at Route 138 Washington Street and Elm Street. That's the 100% design, which is currently under review. And we're waiting a new schedule from the designer. And then 2026 FY year, we have Abington 609-440. That's intersection improvements in Hancock Street and Chestnut Street. We're waiting the 75% design submission, which is currently due, and a new schedule. And then we have the Kingston Duxbury project 606-002, which is intersection improvements at Route 3 with traffic signals, ramps, and Route 3A at Tremont Street. And that's at pre-25%. And a scoping meeting was already held. And then we have FY27. We have the Hanson Corridor Project 608-506, improvements on Route 114, Marquis Street from Pembroke Town Line to Indian Head Street. The SU is being scheduled for that to identify issues with existing water main. And then we have an Abington project 612-525. That's intersection improvements, Randolph Street and Richard and Fitz Drive at Chestnut Street. Where we have the ICE 2 review is being completed by traffic. And we're waiting for that to be completed at this time. Then for 2028, we have, let's see, Hanover, 612-769. Corridor improvements on Route 139 Hanover Street and Main Street, Center Street and Silver. And we're at ICE Stage 1. Looking at intersection concepts. Okay, and then Brockton, 612-626. Intersection improvements at Route 123 Belmont Street, Pearl and Stonehill. And there was a kickoff meeting held 5/12/23. Abington, 612-770. Intersection improvements at Route 18 Bedford Street and Route 123. There was a scoping meeting held in July of this year. And then last one is Stoughton, 611-981. Intersection improvements at Can Street, Route 27, School Street and Summer Street. And that's at ICE Stage 1. And that was completed in June, and there's a new schedule being developed. And that's it.
Anyone have any questions for Rich? Charlie?
Thank you, Chair. So Rich, thank you for the report. We just wanted to check in on those 2 Stoughton jobs in Federal 23,
Yeah,
138, and then Canton Tosca.
Yeah.
I see that they're both on schedule to be advertised on the 26th of this month.
correct.
Okay. And then on the Route 14, you said the sewer is being scheduled. I understand that in the governor's budget, in the state budget, that there was a line item to help fund that. So we wanted to thank Senator Brady for working on that. And is it the collective understanding that the designer is already scheduling that, or is that to be determined, or are they aware of that funding?
My understanding is the town is aware of it, and they're working in conjunction with the designer to schedule the SUE contractor.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Rich? All right, thank you, Richard. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a 7, which is vote potential endorsement of the federal fiscal year 2023-2027 TIP amendment number 5. And I'll turn it over to Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, as you all recall, at your last MPO meeting, you released another amendment 5 to the 2023 to 2027 TIP. If you just want to go to the next page, Sean. So this is what that change was. There was moving that project out of 2023 for total with a $400,000 project. So moving that out of federal fiscal year 2023 to 2024. This amendment was publicly advertised in the Procter Enterprise and Patriot Ledger. It was also went out to our constituency mailing list. We presented it to the Joint Transportation Committee at their August meeting at the beginning of this month. The JTC did approve this amendment as presented. That was our only public comment received. So at this time, I would ask the MPO to consider endorsing this amendment. And since it does affect 2024, it's probably worth noting that this would necessitate an amendment to the 2024 to 2028 TIP, and we'll be doing that this fall.
All right. Can I get a motion second to endorse amendment number 5?
Motion to endorse.
Second, Mary Waldron.
Any questions? All right, Charlie, you want to read the roll?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Richard Bilski,
Yes.
Jay DeGrasse,
Yes.
James Downey,
Hope you're
Dan
muted.
Stout.
Yes.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Dan Salvucci. Dan? Are you muted? Mike Lambert,
Yes.
Mary Waldron,
Yes.
Chair, motion carries.
Okay. Thank you, Bill, for that. We'll move on to agenda item 8, which is potential release for a public 21-day public comment period, on the 2050 Old Colony Long Range Transportation Plan. Take it away, Bill.
Thank you. So long awaited, this is the release or potential release of our draft long range transportation plan that we've seemingly been working on for so long. In reality, it's been about a year, but it's today we're going to provide you a brief presentation of what's contained in this plan and ask that you consider releasing it to a public review and comment period. So on your screen there, you can see that our LRTP is organized as much similar fashion as previous plans have been. So we have an introduction chapter that talks about just what the plan is and the public participation process that went into development of it, the goals and objectives and performance measures, planning scenarios, the regional profile, a highway chapter, a transit chapter, a vulnerable roadway users chapter, environmental chapter, safety and security, perhaps the most important of the entire plan, the financial outlook and statement of fiscal constraint, and then conclusion and recommendations. So if I'll give a brief overview of what's in this plan. So if you just want to jump to the PowerPoint presentation, Sean, I'll start going through that. Thank you. Next page. So I think everyone knows what the long range transportation plan is, but it is a federally required document that all MPOs are required to develop on a periodic schedule. In our case, it's every 4 years. It's a 20-year planning vision for the region. So it's a assessment of current need and what we potentially see plans over the next 20 years and put that against what we expect for revenue. And everything, like all 3C documents, does have to be fiscally constrained. And that's where the chapter 10 comes in. So the development timeline, this is where we've been. I think the first stages of it started way back last spring when the RPAs, MPOs of the state formed a socioeconomic projections committee with MassDOT and the UMass Donahue Institute, which is the contractor under contract to develop socioeconomic projections that go into the development of the plan. You can see further on the timeline, those projections, we didn't receive those until towards the end of May of this year. So those were very much behind schedule, what we expected. In turn, that delayed the development of our travel demand model. In turn, delayed the completion of the highway chapter. So those sections are actually still kind of being refined as we move into the release of this plan. But we feel confident otherwise that this plan is complete in its draft form. Otherwise, you can see the survey, public outreach started towards the end of last year and carried to the spring of this year. And then the development of the plan for the last few months. Next. So just, I know I've talked to this committee, this board a couple times about what's the goals of the LRTP, but just briefly go through them again. So the goals are to develop a safe transportation system, a transportation planning process that's transparent and equitable to all, a transportation system that supports economic vitality of the region, one that's secure, one that's fully accessible to all users, one that promotes and supports a clean environment and leaves the environment in a better state than it was pre-improvement. A resilient transportation system is resilient to impacts from natural and man-made threats. One that's maintaining a state of good repair and an efficient transportation system. Next page. So these are the planning scenarios. So you might recall in the 2020 plan, that was the first time MPOs were required to incorporate planning scenarios into their long-range plans. This go around, we chose to adopt what MassDOT had done in their long-range plan. MassDOT had been developing a statewide long-range plan called Beyond Mobility 2050. And so they had determined planning scenarios in these 6 areas. And, through consultation with the state and other MPOs, we had determined that these 6 areas that the state had identified, these all closely mirror what's happening in our region. So we chose to adopt the planning scenarios that are going into the statewide plan. So those 6 umbrella areas, and there's various scenarios under each of these, but climate change, it's pretty self-explanatory. The future of work, we all know that the workforce has changed a lot in the last few years with pandemic, population trends, housing and economy, prosperity, and technology. So looking at different factors that are happening under these umbrella scenarios, how they play out over the next 20 years or so are going to dictate policy and also implementation decisions going forward. So whether some of the things that are happening under these accelerate and worsen, or if they plateau or reverse, those could all affect how we as planners move forward. So the regional profile. So this is a chapter that contains those socioeconomic projections that I spoke of a moment ago with that was developed through committee with MassDOT and UMDI. And it also contains a detailed analysis of the demographics of the region and how the transportation system interacts with land use and development in the region. So, the recommendations that are coming out of this chapter, they're designed to support and improve how the transportation system interacts with development. So, supporting complete streets designs, for example, supporting age-friendly infrastructure. This is a big one as the population gets older. We're seeing increased need to plan for age-friendly communities. And we've worked with a lot of communities already on age-friendly plans, supporting transportation projects that provide enhanced access to employment centers, supporting Commonwealth sustainable development principles. So these are all, you get an idea of what this chapter is about and how it sets a framework on how we want to plan going into the future. So really focusing on that relationship between the transportation system and development. So the regional highway network, this chapter, this is the one that does contain the travel demand model that's currently being tested and finalized. So it also focuses on things such as motor commercial freight, so the truck network, how movement of goods happens. Obviously the BMT on our roadways contained within this chapter. Go to the next one. The current state of good repair for roadways and bridges. We did the state evaluates bridge conditions every year. And for pavement on the federal aid network, we've been going out over the past year, assessing current conditions and determining need of what's going to take to bring that system up to a state of good repair. Congestion bottlenecks. So the recommendations coming out of this chapter really focus on, a lot of it focuses on efficiency, reducing congestion, reducing or totally eliminating those bottlenecks. Things like coordinated traffic control systems that efficiently move traffic. Identifying areas of need that are going to critical need that's going to take to bring the system up to a state of good repair. And you see the list of recommendations there, types of recommendations in this plan. The next one. And again, so this is what the still in development, but this is what the needs assessment ultimately looks like. So that conditions assessment that they're working on, or have been working on, that determines the conditions index of the roadway, and that it ultimately provides us a dollar value on what's going to take to bring the roadway up to or bring the federal aid system up to a state of good repair. I think those numbers are still being finalized. I know the last plan, it was in the ballpark of $260 million, and you expect it to be right around that, if not more than that, this go around. Next. So regional transit network. So just like the highway chapter, this contains a comprehensive assessment of what comprises the transit network in the region. So you can see we have buses, both local regional transit such as BAG, GATRA, MBTA, the community action council vehicles. We also commuter rail. We have intercity bus, Plymouth Brockton, Peter Pan. Not listed. We also have Bloom bus lines. Airports. We have Plymouth Municipal, Grandland, the Montponset seaplane base. We have the Plymouth Provincetown ferry, and we also have rail freight in this region. So some of the issues facing this transit network, as I spoke earlier, the aging population. That's a big one. Ensuring that all users, regardless of any factor, including age, have access to this to the transit system. So planning for paratransit as well as safe safe walking, that that last mile, first mile to the transit system. Maintaining reliable and sustainable funding, that's important. Looking at gaps in the system. So next one. So some of the recommendations, expanding service, obviously, especially again focusing on the aging population. Making sure that we're reaching that population. Expanding paratransit in the area, intermodal conditions, intermodal infrastructure, I should say, that facilitates mode shift, or moving from one mode to another, and then planning and policy recommendations. Vulnerable roadway users. So this is a fairly new term, well, old term that's coming into more use. So we used to kind of have a blanket term, bicycle and pedestrian, but realizing that it's a lot more than just walkers and bicyclists that we want to focus on when we talk about vulnerable roadway users. So you can see some of the recommendations, continue to support the MassDOT Complete Streets program, improving mobility and access to the infrastructure, encouraging and promoting walking, bicycling as viable, healthy alternatives, especially for short distance trips. And some more recommendations. So, we've been working with our partners, for example, in Serped, looking at, long distance bicycle connections across inter-region. So, from the Old Colony region into the Serped region and going northward into the Metropolitan Boston region. Realizing the importance of looking beyond the borders when it comes to bicycling, especially for commuting, bicycling, or long distance recreation. The environment and transportation. So this is the chapter that looks at the relationship between the transportation system and environment. I think everyone on this meeting probably knows that transportation is the #1 contributor to greenhouse gases. So that's where, not just as a region, but as a planet, really, we're going to make the biggest impact on mitigating climate changes, improving the transportation system. So some of the recommendations here, supporting livable and sustainable land use strategies, ensuring projects that are programmed in the TIP reduce greenhouse gas emissions from where they currently are, and minimizing negative environmental impacts on the system. So, looking at projects and, making sure that they're not gonna, adversely impact waterways or increase noise impacts on any population, and if so, how do we mitigate that? So we go to the next one. So safety and security. This is the chapter. This talks about how we're gonna work towards achieving safety performance goals. I probably remiss to say, so when I talked about chapter 1 and chapter 2, the introduction and the goals and objectives, we do have 3 main areas for performance management targets. We adopt those targets each year through this MPO. As all MPOs have to do so, they have the choice to develop their own targets or to adopt statewide targets. Since this requirement came about, the Old Colony MPO has always chosen to adopt statewide targets. So PM1, as it's known, those are safety performance targets. So this is the chapter that focuses on how, as an MPO and a regional planning agency, we're going to strive to work with our partners on achieving those safety performance targets, which include reducing the overall number of serious injuries and fatalities on the network, as well as the rate of those serious injuries and fatalities, reducing injuries and fatalities to vulnerable roadway users. So how do we go about that? So continuing to implement safe systems approach in all transportation planning, continuing to maintain our safety management system, targeting planning efforts and investments in identified high crash locations. We maintain a database, for example, of high crash locations in the region using an equivalent to property damage only, or EPDO, scoring system, and making sure we fully program all of our available HSIP funding, which is the Highway Safety Improvement Program, in our TIP each year, and increasing partnership and participation in the Safe Routes to School program. And this is actually an outdated slide. It says elementary and middle schools, and that now Safe Routes to School program now applies to all schools, all public schools. So that's very good news. So finally, almost done. The financial outlook and statement of fiscal constraint. So on your screen, you can see expected highway and bridge funding coming into the region through 2044. You can see it's broken into those 5-year timeframes. And then you have the loan 2024 at the end, which does, just the nature of how this plan is set up. It kind of the last year kind of just stands by itself, but you can see, the final box in the lower right there. We estimate that just over $1 billion in funding is going to come into this region through various programs over the life of this plan, which is excellent news. You know, the next one. So this one compares those funding estimates against what we expect for operation or for interest implementation of projects and operations and maintenance. And we typically spend almost to the dollar every tip cycle what comes into this region. So, and you can see that that bottom number reflects that. So we do expect that for what does come into this region, we are going to spend that out. We do not have any major projects that are going to exceed the funding coming into this region. Not that we foresee at this time. So at least from a highway standpoint, this plan is fiscally constrained. And if you want to go to the next one. And this looks at just similarly to the last page, the previous page. This looks at operations and capital for transit through the life of this plan. And again, it is fiscally constrained. You can see, the bottom of the final two boxes on your lower right side of the screen. You can see projected funding is higher than the projected operations and maintenance costs. So we feel strongly that the the transit side of this plan is also fiscally constrained. So thank you for your time. That's kind of relatively brief overview of what's in this plan. So I'm happy to answer any questions right now, but otherwise I would ask that this board consider releasing this plan to a 21-day public review and comment period, which would conclude the Friday before. It'd be longer than 21 days. So it would conclude the Friday before our next MPO meeting, which is scheduled for September 19th. So that the public review and comment period would conclude at the end of the day on September 15th.
All right, thanks, Bill. Can I get a motion in a second to release the long-range plan out for public comment? And then I'll have entertain any questions.
I'll make that motion, Dan from Whitman.
Second, Michael Lambert.
All right, any questions for Bill? All right. Charlie-
Just a quick comment, Chair, if it's all right. I just want to thank Bill and OCPC for excellent work on this. From a transit point of view, I think Bill really highlighted some of the areas we'll be working on, particularly expanding access to either new customers or aging customers. And that takes a form both of addressing any transit barriers. And as I've talked about before in this group, we have a program to expand the number of shelters out there, and all of our shelters now come with solar lighting as well. And so that's really important from a safety and security point of view. And then in terms of expanding paratransit, I mentioned at the top of this meeting about our success with the Rockland microtransit service, and that's likely to be the form that expansions take, in that it allows for some of the efficiency of larger transit vehicles, but the customer service and convenience that Uber and Lyft provide, and customers can see the vehicle approaching them on an app. They can book everything over their phone, pay via an account, and that's sort of using microtransit to fill in some of the gaps, assuming that the numbers work financially is appears to be a good path forward for transit agencies in this area. And then finally, Bill mentioned the connection between GATRA and BAT. To that extent, we're watching carefully any of the developments happening at Raynham Park. They have an application in for a license to redevelop that as a Caesar Sportsbook, which would be the largest freestanding sportsbook in the country, I believe. And obviously that would create a good opportunity for a meeting point for GATRA and BAT, as well as provide the draw that may be needed in order to make that route sustainable. But again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. And likewise, thank you to you and Glenn and everyone over there at Brockton Area Transit. It really makes developing this plan a lot easier when we have the great cooperation that we've always had from you guys. So thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, Charlie, you want to read the roll, please?
Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Richard Bilski,
Yes.
Jay DeGrasse,
Yes.
James Downey,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Mike Lambert,
Yes.
and Mary Waldron.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Thanks,
Bill.
Glenn.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item 9, which is the 2023 Old Colony Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan. I don't know who's doing this. Charlie?
I will be, Mr. Chair.
All right, Sean, I didn't see you there. Go ahead, Sean.
That's okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be discussing today the 2023 Old Colony Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan, and seeking your approval for a review and release to a public review and comment period, same as the LRTP. And so just kind of an introduction. So the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan is important because any transportation project, whether it be buses or service or anything of that nature that's seeking 5310 federal funds, must be part of a Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan. Similar to the Long Range Transportation Plan, it is a document that is updated every 4 years. And this report helps summarize serving the transportation disadvantaged populations, which is essentially just populations that are unable to transport themselves and need public transit in any form to get to where they're going, whether it be shopping or a medical appointment or work or whatever the reason may be. And so special needs transportation, it is defined as any mode of transportation used by those defined as transportation disadvantaged or with a special transportation need. And some of the types of these special needs transportations are, fixed route, paratransit, rideshare, volunteer driver programs, and then any other type of federal, state, or local funded mode of transportation. And then here's a table with a brief description of some of the funding programs that are discussed in the draft report. There are 2 different types of 5310 fundings. There's one for mobility management, which is to increase mobility for older adults and people with disabilities or special needs. There's an 80% federal funding with a 20% local matching. And then the other 5310, which is defined or titled as Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities, provides operations funding as well, which is a 50-50 split between federal funding and local matching. Both of those funding types require a yearly application process through MassDOT. And then there are two other types of funding that have similar funding breakdowns, 5307, which is large urban cities, and then 5311, which is rural and small urban areas. They provide capital and operating assistance for public transit systems, similar to the mobility management 5310 funding. It is a 80-20 split between federal funding and local matching with a yearly application through the Massachusetts Executive Office of Transportation. And then a recent addition that was not in the previous report was the Community Transit Grant Program, as I'm sure everybody on this call is aware of in some form or another. It provides operating, mobility management, and accessible vehicle funding for older adults and people with disabilities. For the operating projects, it is a 50-50 split between MassDOT funding and local matching. And then for mobility management and accessible vehicles, it is an 80% MassDOT funding and local 20% local matching, excuse me, with a yearly application process through MassDOT. So with coordinated transportation, it's a coordination with transit providers to address gaps such as the previously mentioned gap between Brockton Area Transit and the Greater Attleboro-Taunton Regional Transit Authority. Both of these organizations have utilization of ride-hail services, such as microtransit with the Rockland service with the Brockton Area Transit Authority, and then GATRA has 3 GATRA Go services. There is one up in the town of Situate, another one for the town of Pembroke, and a handful of destinations in the towns of Hanover and Hanson. And then there is the GATRA Go Coastline, which services the town of Plymouth. An attempt to try to coordinate transportation from the report identified, potentially trying to group riders from different funded agencies to help kind of group riders together and do, similar, if not the same trips in one ride, as opposed to having trips from different organizations going to the same place, and also leveraging purchasing power for vehicles and training for any new drivers for these services. And these are the transportation providers for our area. Obviously, everybody is aware probably of all of these, but here in the city of Brockton, we have the Brockton Area Transit Authority that provides fixed route and paratransit, and as well as recently the microtransit with the Rockland service. There's the Greater Attleboro-Taunton Regional Transit Authority, which is stretches for a wide region from as far west as the town of Taunton and the city of Taunton and the town of Attleboro, as well as far south as the town of Wareham and town of Plymouth over on the coast. Another big provider is the South Shore Community Action Council, which services the entire South Shore. It services all 17 of OCPC's communities with transportation assistance. There are 2 commuter buses in our region. There's the Plymouth and Brockton bus company, which services 2 routes that go up and down Route 3, from one route from the Cape and the other from the South Shore, the South Coast, that goes up to Logan Airport in Boston. And as of recently, Peter Pan bus has started or has recently taken on more stops in our region. One specific example is the West Bridgewater Park and Ride MassDOT Park and Ride Law that was previously serviced by Bloom Bus, and then for a short period of time Plymouth and Brockton took it over, and starting August 7th, Monday of last week, it is now a Peter Pan bus stop.
Good.
And then all 17 of our communities have our councils on aging with various services depending on which community you live. And then we also have the Old Colony Area Agency on Aging, AAA for short, which can be tied in with the Ombudsman Volunteer Transportation program. And then there are also numerous private transportation providers throughout the area that service all of our communities. So some of the unmet service needs identified in the report: expanded public transportation service area and hours. As it's been stated in this meeting and is identified in the report, trying to intermodal connections between regional transit authorities would be a great service, something that has been identified in years past and something that is still being worked on. More transportation options to areas with a high concentration of employers. So locations such as the Avon Industrial Park have been identified with the vast amount of employers in that area. And then, as previously stated, connecting regional transit authorities to facilitate regional mobility with BAT and GATRA. 2 years ago, there was a study conducted to try to identify potential routes to connect the BAT and GATRA service areas, just to try to especially get a option for people in the GATRA service area up to the city of Brockton if for anybody who might need services at the VA hospital over on Belmont Street. Obviously, they're the only public transportation option to get there is with BAT. However, if you live south of the BAT service area and you do not have a personal vehicle, it is, it can be difficult to get to the VA hospital for any service needs. And then some of the strategies identified, one being microtransit. Obviously, as Michael has mentioned in previous meetings, as well as today, the Rockland microtransit service has seen extreme success. And GATRA has also announced that they have had success with their GATRA Go services. Increased fixed route service area and hours, as well as paratransit service area and hours. This is just another couple of identified strategies that could increase transit ridership and use. Obviously, there would be a cost with that. So obviously weighing the pros and cons of those is something that needs to be identified. Expand volunteer driver programs, such as programs as the Ombudsman volunteer program, which is obviously a great service for the Old Colony AAA area. Promote increased transit connections. Bill kind of talked about this with the LRTP, utilizing especially the commuter rail and park and ride lots for intermodal connections and, other things such as carpooling to try to lower vehicle traffic as well as greenhouse gas emissions. Expand the paratransit buffer beyond 3/4 of a mile. That has been the set buffer for number of years now. So potentially expanding that could increase transit service as well. And then same day transportation services, for anybody who may have any last minute needs for transportation, being able to, make a phone call and be able to schedule a ride for the same day, would also be a great service to add as well. And that is the summary of the Coordinated Human Services Plan. I'm more than happy to take any questions that anybody may have.
All right, anyone have any questions for Sean on the Human Services Transportation Plan? All right, doesn't look like any. Can I get a motion, Secretary Lisa, for a 21-day public comment period?
I'll make that motion, Dan from Whitman.
Is there a second?
Second, Mary Waldron.
All right, last chance. Any questions? Seeing none. Charlie, you want to read the roll, please?
Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
Richard Bilski,
Yes.
Jada Gross,
Can you work
Yes.
on?
James Downey,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Mike Lambert,
Yes,
Mary Waldron.
Yes, great job, staff.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sean. We'll move on to agenda item 10, which is administrative matters, other business, date and time of next meeting. Charlie, take it away.
Okay, stand by. So we have two quick funding notices for you. Is just a reminder, this was reported at your last MPO meeting, the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhood Access and Equity Program is NOFO is out, and applications are due by September 28th. Next slide. And not to be outdone, FTA has their own NOFO out. So this is for TOD development, and applications are due August 17th. And there's a webinar on August 17th, and that'll provide some more information on what this is. One of the requirements of this program is you actually have to be an existing FTA grant recipient. So this is an opportunity for a transit partner to align with a community to apply for a common grant together. So next slide. And as the chair spoke to earlier about the Moving Together conference, please save the date. And if you haven't registered, please consider registering. It's October 4th in Boston, and it's in person. So next slide. And here's some dates that we're asking MPO members and planning partners to save the date for upcoming meetings of the Old Colony MPO. So we're booking out through the end of the calendar year, September, October, and November, December timeframe. Our placeholders in the back end, but we're definitely looking at having the first 3 meetings as we're considering endorsement of the long-range plan and the coordinated human services plan at your September meeting. And then in October, as Bill talked to earlier, was there's already a need to amend the new tip. So theoretically, that would be released for a public review and comment period in October and considered for endorsement post public review comment period in November. I know the city of Brockton was a recent awardee of the RAISE program put out by the US DOT. So that's great news for the city and recognizing all their hard efforts, but that's a project that would actually have to be amended into the tip. So it's already a couple of action items on the docket, but that's what we have for some admin items for the MPO today.
All right. Anyone else have any other business? Yeah, Dan.
No, nothing. I've just unmute myself.
Oh, okay. All
I
right.
am-
so-
Actually, Stephen, I just have one quick,
Sure, go ahead, Mary.
so we have a wonderful intern, Nate Ryan, who had been participating in the MPO and JTC meetings. This week is his last week. And he goes back to school to Ireland is where he is, but he's a native from the area, and he's just has shown, and I'll let Charlie say a couple words because he's really has worked with the transportation department closely, but just wanted to say thank you to Nate, and as he will be heading off to school.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for the introducing Nate to the group and recognize Nate. Nate joined us as an intern, and he has been professional, thoughtful, thorough, and he's really quick with turning projects around. It's really impressive, whether it's pavement management projects or doing an inventory of countermeasures for road safety audits. He's just kind of really developed the work quickly. We're doing a project that actually came up during the certification review, was kind of taking a look at the makeup of the Joint Transportation Committee, and are there other types of entities that should or could be included in that group? So he did some online research. So we have a cross comparison matrix of all the Joint Transportation Committees and planning advisory groups to see what others are doing as far as a best practice. And, we'll be talking about that with our committee later on. And Nate has a flair for the bicycling community. Actually, both Nate and Kyle Mowat volunteered at the most recently the Pan Mass Challenge, and just a little inside baseball. And we didn't know this until Nate was actually here for a couple of weeks. But those of you at 4150 that know Dave Friedenfeld from years past, Nate is actually David's nephew. So it's a small world. So, but he's done a great job. We hope to see him again in the future. So.
Well, Nate, thanks for everything this summer and good luck. And it's cool. And with that, I will ask for a motion second to adjourn.
So moved, Dan from Whitman.
Second, Mary Waldron.
All right, all in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 All right, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the last couple of weeks of summer and your Labor Day, and we'll see you in September. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.